with you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
You're tuned to the Record Collectors with Mike Adams and Chris Savory on your favourite local BBC station. And Simon's with us, and Tony Pearsall has walked into the studio. Hello, Tony.
Hi, Mike. Good
yes,
evening.
yeah, we've at long last listened to you about doing a Deep Purple special. So I know it was Warhorse, but we are going to be digging into the vaults and playing some cracking tracks, and you'll be guiding us as well.
I hope so, Mike. Yeah.
But there is a link. What's the link between Deep Purple?
Well, the link between Warhorse and Deep Purple is that band was formed by the original Deep Purple bass player Nick Simper after he'd left the band in 1969. Nick Simper, a lot of your listeners probably know, used to play bass with Johnny Kidd. Was actually in the car crash that killed Johnny, was severely injured himself and couldn't play for several months after that. But if you or anybody ever speaks to Nick Simper, he still carries an extremely large torch for Johnny Kidd, and he still rates him as probably the greatest rock and roller there ever was, I think. And he still has a the bass guitar that he used to play with Johnny.
Yes.
In his house, yeah.
I mean, Johnny Kidd, I saw him perform, and I've actually got his autograph.
Right.
And he was which I treasure, he was a very good artist.
Yeah.
I think what distracted from me, just quite quickly, that anecdote, is really the outfits were a bit bizarre. The music stood up without the outfits, actually.
Yes, the leather boots up to the thighs and the pirate gear and all the rest of it, yeah.
Let's go to Deep Purple, the archive connection, as it were. You actually run this in Sheffield, don't you? Coordination of Deep Purple. Can you tell us a bit about
what's happened, Mike, over the years is that I've carried on my fondness for Deep Purple's music. People at record companies come and go very quickly, and it's kind of ended up that I'm the only person who seems to know an awful lot about the band's music for some of these labels. So they kind of come calling when they want to put compilations together, all the rest of it. So over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, I've managed to start steering them towards more collector-orientated releases, particularly EMI, who are now doing an ongoing remastering program of the classic Deep Purple albums, and we're going through the vaults, getting unissued versions and all the rest of it together, and hopefully providing some nice packages for the buyers.
And Tony, how long have you been a Deep Purple fan? How long does it? When does it begin?
Well, it began for me. I found it tonight at the same time as Simon when we first heard Black Knight. You know, the first few bars of that, Richie's heavy guitar, etc., was the turn on for me. And like I say, I discovered the same happened with Simon tonight.
Yeah,
so
exactly,
nice coincidence.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a good article about Richie Blackmore in the August edition of Record Collector.
I think people are going to start suspecting Record Collector is being sponsored by Deep Purple, because they had a big Gillan feature a couple of months ago. They had the big Richie feature, and this month I haven't seen it yet, but I think there's a Deep Purple 2-pager in there as well, so people are going to start suspecting things soon.
Well, pick a track and tell me the album it's from.
Okay, well, we might as well kick off with a bit of classic Deep Purple, which is from the album most people associate with the band, which is Deep Purple in Rock, originally issued in June 1970. And this is a rare early take of the track Speed King. How many student walls and gram decks were covered with that record in the early 70s. Classic track from Deep Purple, tuned to the Record Collectors.
And how many are now? Because at fairs, the number of people who are asking for that material who were not born when that was recorded. The number of, I call them youngsters, you know, no disrespect, I'm talking of 18, 20, you know, university age. The number of people that come in, have you got any Purple? And it was stuff that was recorded before they were born.
We were talking to Simon and Tony. I mean, this is getting on for 28, 29 years ago.
It's true what Chris has just said. I know a guy who works in a shop in Sheffield called Record Collector, strangely enough, and he works in the vinyl department, or did till quite recently. He said we get 14, 15-year-olds in here wanting that album, along with Zeppelin and Sabbath, but there is definitely...
From Floyd.
Yeah.
But there's a massive university in Sheffield, of course.
Yes, it's a very big campus now, yeah.
You're responsible for tonight's programme, Tony. Tony Pearsall.
Yes.
It's him we can blame.
We can blame it on you. I mean, tell me a little bit about your early collection days of Deep Purple.
Well, going back to what you're just talking about, I mean, you go to the gigs and you still see a lot of youngsters there, don't you?
Yeah,
Simon.
Yeah.
And so it's ever growing, you know, the popularity of Purple, I think. I don't think it'll diminish anyway. But going back to when I first got interested, the late 60s, we had the Hendrix Experience, etc., and the Cream, which was getting towards what I liked. And when, like I said earlier, when I heard Richie playing the first few bars on Black Knight, that was what I've been waiting for. And I hope we can get round to playing it in a minute.
Well, we'll get that track in. We'll try and get it. We've got 25 minutes left to do it in.
Right.
What I mean, the first album you bought, was that the first album you bought?
The first album?
Rock?
I think it was, in rock, yeah.
How many?
First Purple album, that was, yeah.
How large is your collection?
Oh, got Rainbow, Purple, offshoots like Dio, I've got loads. How many how many do you want to know? Yeah.
Simon, you brought in some which is quite rare, which we want our listeners to help us as well.
I could do some help on this one because my expertise doesn't really run to the 60s. I was
just a wee.
I was
a twinkle.
I was the 70s, as it were.
Do we believe in folks?
I believe.
So, as I said, EMI are working continually on the remastering of these early albums, and in hunting for material to put on the first 3 Deep Purple albums, which we're hoping to reissue towards the end of this year and into next year, we found a couple of tracks, of which one we didn't even know the band had ever recorded, and when I spoke to a couple of the band members, they can't remember recording it, so I played it to them, and they can't remember who they ripped the track off from, because in those days Purple were about 50% a covers band. They'd do these long symphonic versions of the Beatles, Neil Diamond, Donovan, whatever. And they know they covered this record, but they couldn't remember who it was by. So I was hoping that if you can play this track, somebody might be able to ring in or phone or write in a couple of weeks and let us know who did the original. And they can be credited when EMI do the Deep Purple version.
But there's an opportunity for you. Our number is 01743 248 321, and the whole team is having a go at this, but because we won't take away the kudos from yourselves, our listeners, because you're the most important people. But our number is 01743 248 321. If you can help us, who wrote this track. And Tony has actually got a quiz question this week. I'm going to have 2 winners next week. We've got 2 great Deep Purple albums as prizes. Thank you very much indeed, Simon. But first, this track. We need your help now. Tell us who wrote this. Now listen, guys out there, none of us know the answer to this. It's all over Deep Purple. Who wrote this track? Please give us a call. You can be credited on the album even.
Who recorded it?
Who recorded it first?
Let's get there first.
01743, but it's the actual composer one as well. 01743 248 321.
When I see 2 young lovers.
And that's Deep Purple. And it's over. It's all over. Now, we have got a guide that tells us it's all over. And if we just press... There's a number of contenders that it could be. If you can recognise who the recording of the artist, then we can actually get the record out and then find out who composed it. But just roll off some names there of possible composers or singers of this particular song, because we don't know.
No, well, someone's just brought in one of these music track guides here, and we're looking at something like well over a dozen artists have recorded a song called It's All Over. We're looking at Buju Banton, Kevin Coyne, I can't imagine they would cover that, God Machine, I've never heard of them, David Gray, The Hawks from the 50s, Benny King even, Bob Luman, Anne Murray, Anthony Newley. Can you imagine Deep Purple sat around in the studio with an Anthony Newley album?
What?
Positive K, Johnny Ray, Cliff Richard. I had a couple of people say it sounds very Cliffy, and I must admit, when I first heard it, that was my Whispering Smith, I think Tina Turner, or Muddy Waters, or even Chick Willis. The only clue we've got date-wise is that the band would have recorded that in 1968. They only did it twice in a studio when they were looking for a B-side, and they never actually issued it. So again, that's an exclusive for Record Collector's Show.
Tony?
Benny King was on Black Atlantic, if I remember right, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's something I might be able to listen to at home to discount it, because it's ages since I've heard it, so...
Quick, anybody? Tony Pearsall, do you...
I've got no advance on that one, I'm afraid. Was it recorded in America, would you say? Yeah.
That particular version was recorded in London for a radio show.
In America when
yes, they used to, when they were short. See, in those days, Deep Purple, they had to put on something like 2.5 albums out a year, as well as 4 singles. They were desperate for material. And Nick says they would sit in their hotel rooms going through what they felt were obscure albums, looking for stuff they could cover.
So we need this for this release, and if you can help us, obviously, I mean, we've got the best music brains in the country out there, so if you think you can help us, 01743 248 321. Now, Tony, you have got there a Deep Purple mint album, or is it album or a single?
Beautiful piece of purple vinyl there. It's a single. It's a maxi single, LP, whatever. With 12-inch version, which Roger Glover remixed a couple of their early tracks. Black Knight and Speed King, but I'd like to hear the original version. It's on this same LP, and I think one day this will be collectible.
I mean, any value on that particular?
I wouldn't say at the moment probably, but there's only limited amount made. So
yeah, I was talking to Tony earlier. He was asking me, EMI, bless them, are still doing vinyl editions of these Deep Purple remasters, and they're doing something like between 2,000 and 4,000 copies in general, but that's for the world, and they're just not turning up very often at all. So we think they are a future collectible. Yeah.
So. Put a price. What are we going to put on it? Let's go for it without saying auctionable.
Well, it's a couple of years old already,
3 years,
so you're probably looking around 750, 8 quid, I would think, already. Yeah.
They're slapping on the deck. And that, of course, is Black Knight, and that was the choice of Tony Pearsall, which is a classic track. But I gather there's a little story about how that track was put together, Simon.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
remember.
I'm just trying to dodge the clouds of dandruff. Everyone here is shaking their heads as they used to in the discos back in the 70s. Yeah, yeah. Purple had they'd done in rock. They'd finished the album. They were congratulating one another on their forthcoming success. And the manager strode in and said, "Hey up, lads, there's no single on this album because all the tracks were like 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 minutes long." So he said, "We can't put it out till you finish the single," and the band just could not come up with anything, so they retired to the pub in time-honoured British fashion. So
was this in London?
Yes, indeed. Came back a few hours later, well-oiled, left Ian Gillan in the pub, bashed down this track, dragged Ian back, and he just made up the lyrics on the spur of the moment, and bang, there you go, straight into the charts. And that's the one that cracked it for Deep Purple in Europe, really.
I mean, it's an absolute classic track, but I think we've had an answer to your question.
Oh, I'm looking
right. In fact, what you were saying there, that's the best way to do them. But we were right. We were on the way, because I said, it's a soul guy. I put a little cross-didn't line next to that piece that said Benny King. We've had it.
Yes,
Roy, you are going to credit the Record Collectors Programme playing to start with. Or else, he said. But anyway, you're also going to credit, hopefully, Roy Gelder of Darlaston, who says, originally recorded by Ben E. King. We could probably look up the number straight away because it was on Black Atlantic. It'll be 8040 something. Written by Russell and Leander. So they are Roy Gelder of Darlaston. There's his number.
Yep.
Everything. So, Roy, thanks very much. In fact, we were also right because somebody said no phone calls, and I said, I bet you somebody's out there looking at it and thinks, I'm just going to play the Benny King version and see, and that is exactly what Roy did. He heard that, he went upstairs, grabbed the Benny King record, played it, and said, it's Benny King.
Roy.
That's brilliant. Well done, Roy. Yes.
The applause is for you, Roy. Yes, and you'll take that information with you, will you?
I certainly will, because I put the sleeve notes together for EMI, so I'll certainly try and get Roy. Well, I'll promise him I'll get him a credit on that.
Another
cover.
first for the record collectors. Yes. Now you have actually got a quiz question. Tony Pearsall, you got a quiz question, and the prizes are supplied by RPM. So there's going to be.
Could I just briefly elaborate on the prizes?
Yes,
because
indeed. Yes.
Not being a Deep Purple expert yourself,
No,
Mike, you don't realise how wonderful and rare these two items are.
Oh, dig. Go and have another one.
He loves it, you know.
We've specially imported from America. We've got a version of the RPM Gemini suite, which came out in England a couple of years ago. This is American edition, and they've lavished it up with a poster, a gold CD, and a nice little slipcase. So that's not available in this country, except to possibly expensive imports. The other one is the American version of the Deep Purple Foxbat recording, the double CD, but again it's the American sleeve and the American packaging, and that's what makes these hopefully quite special. And I must say thanks to Tony for doing a couple of questions. I was a bit late arriving here, and Tony had put two nice questions together for us.
Go on, Tony, read them out for us. And this is what is up for grabs.
Well, do you want the two?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you've got to get them both right, and the first two people that write into us that we draw out of the hat next week will in fact have one of these albums each. Okay?
Okay, well, it's not an exclusive Deep Purple on this first one, so, you know, it's open to everybody. Which line from a famous Little Richard song did Deep Purple use as the title of a top 10 hit LP?
I think I know that myself. I can't enter though, can we? Next one, go on.
The other one is, from which well-known Deep Purple track was the line taken, Funky Claude was running in and out, pulling kids out the ground?
Now repeat the questions again.
Right, the first one was, which line from a famous Little Richard song did Deep Purple use as the title of a top 10 hit LP? Okay. Number 2 was, from which well-known Deep Purple track was this line taken? Funky Claude was running in and out, pulling kids out the ground.
Right. Okay, those are your questions. As always, postcards or letters to the record collectors. That's Mike Adams and Chris Saber. We're still stuck in this P.O. Box. P.O. Box 397. Pretty tight in here this evening. P.O. Box 397, Shrewsbury, SY1 3TT. We've got the clock's 7.5 minutes to let's get this track. And tell us a bit about these two tracks that are going to run together.
Yeah, this is a bit of Deep Purple rehearsing in June 1975 with their new guitarist Tommy Bolin, which hopefully will appear on an RPM CD in a couple of months' time, so another exclusive for you. It's a slight false start here, but you'll get the picture when it gets going.
That's Deep Purple. You're tuned to the Record Collectors with Mike Adams and Chris Savery on your favourite local BBC radio station. Don't forget the big fair tomorrow at the NEC, and the quiz question tonight, provided by our friend Tony Pearsall, was which line from a famous Little Richard song did Deep Purple use as a title of a top 10 hit? And actually knew the answer to that one. And top 10 album. Thank you very much indeed. And from which well-known Deep Purple track was the line Funky Clouds was running in and out, pulling kids out of the ground? You know where to write to. P.O. Box 397, Shrewsbury, SY1 3TT. And my special thanks to Simon Robertson from RPM, also for the prizes, to Tony for help pulling it together for us.
Thank you.
And my special thanks as well. Just to tell you that next week it's the Dells, and the week after, all I'll say is hopefully we're coming from the Jamaican High Commission in London. I shan't say any more than that, but don't forget this weekend, as Mike says, record fairs. Get to the NEC, get to Evesham if you can. Next week there's one at Leek, Maud Institute, Clark Bank, and Sunday downtown Shrewsbury at the British Rail Club. See you next Friday.
Yes, the clock's beating us. Don't forget to write to us at P.O. Box 397, Shrewsbury, SY1 3TT. You've been tuned to the Record Collectors. Mike Adams and Chris Saber.